Kia ora, ngā mihi nui ki koutou. Ko Barry Koutsaho, ko te kārahi o te patea whai whakaro. Nau mai haere mai, whakatū mai ki tēnei hui mariko. Hi there, I'm Barry Coates. I'm founder and co-CEO of the charity Mindful Money. We're a charity that provides transparency on investment, and we promote people being able to invest in line with their values. We provide these services for free, which we can do because we're a charity. And we also want to alert people to important issues. And one of the key issues that we're talking about today is the issue of modern slavery. So we'll come on to that in a second. I just wanted to set the scene a little bit. When we do annual surveys, it shows that 91% of people in New Zealand want to avoid investing in issues that violate human rights. Of course, slavery of all forms is one of those violations of human rights. And the thing is that actually, if you look at how much money is invested in those issues, it's almost 4 billion New Zealand dollars in our KiwiSaver funds. And so that's huge. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that these issues get out to the public, and so we run things like these podcasts and seminars in order to inform the public. And everyone should have an ability and be empowered to take the right choices with their investment funds. So that's one of the things we're contributing to today. So on the issue of modern slavery or exploitation of people in our economy, there are many forms of exploitation. There's forced work and bonded labour, there's children doing hazardous work, trafficking of women and children, often for sex, people exploited in the process of making the everyday products. And just as a kind of a magnitude on that, it's estimated that around 10% of the goods that we buy in New Zealand are made through some form of exploitation and modern slavery. So it's huge. It's happening around the world, but as we're talking about today, it also happens in New Zealand. I think that we can kind of use that scene setter to introduce, firstly, our guest, Brian Henry. Brian is founder and on the board of a really interesting investment fund called Always-Ethical, and he is a leading barrister as well, and so he's wearing two hats today. So Brian, please, very warm welcome, and can you introduce Always-Ethical and your legal work?
Always-Ethical is principally a KiwiSaver fund, and we at the outset in 2014 set out an ethical mandate where we specified out what we saw as ethical investing. Our biggest difference is the fact we will not invest in interest-based products because we see usury and interest as contrary to the good health of a lot of people. But instead of that, we actually participate in the investment with the people. So we take the risk along with those that are doing whatever they're doing. And we find that a much more comfortable position rather than lending money and if things fail saying, oh, tough luck, we stay for the long haul. The other big difference is everybody says they don't do gambling. Well, any product that relies on chance for its outcome is gambling, and we do not do that with any of our products. So it's not just casinos, it is actually the nature of the products we invest in. So we set that in a mandate, we stick to that mandate. It's audit reviewed every year. It is checked daily against the information. So we have a very, very strict policy on sticking with our ethics. And things like slavery, which we're going to come to, they become values that you have to look at.
And we'll come back to a bit more of Always-Ethical later on. But can you introduce the other side, the other hat, your work as a barrister, and particularly on cases that involve human rights?
Well, I celebrated 50 years as a barrister a few weeks ago, and my work started like all young barristers. You do criminal work, you move into commercial work. My main field was patents, copyright, technology, and latterly I had people come to me with Gloriavale. So right now I'm doing what they call human rights law. I don't call it that. I just call it basic decency. To me, slavery is a tort. It's always been a frowned on thing for the last several hundred years. Slavery was very common when they set up whole lots of parts of the Commonwealth. America, of course, was an original slave-based colony. New Zealand never did that, but it is something that was a grounding for a lot of the world, and it's abhorrent. It is just utterly abhorrent, and the consequences of forced labour on people, their life and what they do, it's terrible. One of the cases I'm very proud of was Sue Couch, who was the victim of the RSA murders. She survived, terribly beaten, and we sued corrections successfully. So she got some compensation to make life a bit more comfortable. But it's people like her that are helpless, and slavery is everybody involved is helpless to the slave masters. Yeah, Gloriavale came along, as I said, and that triggered something in me, and I'm still here.
Great. And we'll follow that story a little bit more in a minute. But it's now my huge pleasure and honour to introduce Pearl Valor. Pearl was brought up in Gloriavale and has shown, I think, incredible courage in coming out and talking about her experience and being central in taking this case. So it's great having you here, Pearl. So thank you for joining us.
Kia ora, and thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit of what it was like growing up in Gloriavale? Give people a sense of what life was like for you.
I think it's quite complicated because it's really confusing. So they've simplified life into 2 boxes, and if you didn't fit, then you're the problem. And then if you're confused at all, then they have scriptures that they take out of context. So like confusion is a sign that the devil has got to you in some way. So it's a very complicated, very confusing environment for a child to grow up in, and very unsafe, like psychologically and even physically, really unsafe. But then it is important to note we're outdoors, we've got the rivers, the mountains, and we've got that beautiful side, but it also doesn't take away from the harm.
Yeah. It's amazing those pictures of Gloriavale being in such a just outstanding environment, and yet you faced enormous kind of pressures and restrictions as you grew up. So you grew up kind of working really hard, sort of starting early, doing long hours of housework and other things. Can you describe how all of that happened?
It's just when you're born into the system, it's just normal in life, and you see your siblings doing it, you see your mother doing it, so you just know where you're going to slot into. I think people assume that it's like the washing's a family washing situation, but everything's commercial.
Yep.
So the kitchen's not just cooking for your family, it's catering, and the washing is like commercial laundering, and the cleaning's a cleaning company. Like using the proper language, actually provides context so we can actually deal with the issues.
And so in those working situations, you were working for the good of the community, but you weren't being paid kind of extra income that you could use for savings and
No monetary compensation. And also, like, while out in society, money is quite a taboo topic, in the community, it is talked about, but in a very fearful, threatening way. So, again, there is scripture texts and stories taken out of context, and it could be used as death threats and all that sort of. So there's this like real fear of money. So it's very complicated.
Yeah, that sounds really, and it sounds like huge amount of pressure on you and others in the community. When you were growing up, did you think this was kind of anomalous? Did you realise that you were in a situation where others had fewer restrictions, more freedom?
I did resent the boys. I was aware they had more freedoms and rights than me, and everything was categorised as these are women's emotions, these are women's jobs, these are women's a role, and it's like a really Jane Austen type role, you know, women float around and just exist, and to like prop up the men, basically. Yeah. And I saw the boys, and they could, you know, go biking, climb trees, and we did all that when we were younger. But as we got older, you know, I need to stop doing that because ladies don't do that. Yeah.
Through all of this time, how much access did you have to news and information from the outside world, and to kind of be able to appreciate what else was happening?
It was very limited. So we did have movies, but they were edited, and it just depended, like, your access. So my mum would do town trips, so then I probably had more access than other people. So I would go with her to town quite often, and I would go to the Grandmouth Library, and I'd be able to read books. And other people my age didn't have that. And then I think, in the community, my family was classed as a worldly family or rebels, and that was probably because we had more access and connection to the outside world than most families, but not really up to date with what's going on in the politics of the world. Like, no idea who Kate Shepherd was.
For all of these pressures and restrictions and the use of scriptures and so on, it then kind of made you subject to the kind of rigorous work. As you say, you work long hours. I read in an interview you did that you were forced to do quite manual labour when you were pregnant, for example. And was that common, that you actually had this kind of, the term is kind of forced labour. If it's in a different situation, we don't usually apply it to somewhere like Gloriavale, but that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. So, even when you're pregnant, maybe the work shifts a bit when you have children, and you might do a little bit different, like working with kids a bit more. But you're still rostered. You still have to show up, because if you don't, the work's still going to be there, or your friends and family are going to have to pick up the slack. And this is another situation where they weaponise the scripture, and they say God won't give you anything you can't handle. So if you can't handle showing up to work, it's a you problem, and you're not having faith, and you're not trusting God. So it's like gaslighting, really. Yeah, like quite a narcissistic God.
Pearl, what changed? What led you to the point that you were willing to look at speaking out, starting to contact a lawyer and take some action? Can you describe that for us?
Well, I'll point you to Brian on that, because he contacted me first, and then there's a story I can follow up with that.
We had restarted the litigation before Pearl came out, and we got told she was coming out, and that's important because her husband was a Valor. He is the princeling son of a top shepherd, and we went to the house where Pearl was staying. This was her first night out, second night out. It was the second night out. And I asked her, of the four options, because the teams are on rotations: food preparation, there's cooking, there's cleaning, and there's washing. And it's every period you get the rotation of those four. So it's a 4-day changing rotation, week in, week out, 365 days a year, except for 7 days where they have a holiday. And I asked Pearl, which of the four options do you prefer?
Yeah, so that's when I met Brian, and I sat on the couch and I thought, I liked washing because it was away from the hustle and bustle of the community. I was thinking this in my head. And then I was like, oh, I liked cooking because I could use a little bit of creativity. And then I was like, oh, I actually liked sewing because it was different. And then I sat there and I was like, did I like any of it? And no one's ever asked me what I liked before. This is the first time in my life. Someone has asked me what I liked, and I don't know. And I just got up and walked out. I didn't answer it.
Yeah, she just walked out of the room. And it was, we understood. She'd never had a choice before.
Yeah.
She'd never been asked her opinion before. This was a whole new world.
Wow.
And Pearl responded very quickly to the outside world, and you can see now you've got a very poised, smart, talking back, and she talks back to us all the time, plaintiff. And it's been great going forward with her and some of the other women that have come out as plaintiffs as well, because they are very suppressed, intelligent women.
Yeah.
And they are proving every time I meet them to be smarter and smarter.
Yeah, I think for many people watching this or listening to the podcast, they'd be sitting here and saying, gosh, what courage it took. When you had that conversation with Brian, were you at that stage thinking that this might lead to some kind of legal case and or were you just kind of there just to listen to what he had to say?
I was there to listen, and I was aware of what was going on. And so after that I did give it some thought, and it was 6 months later I went back to him and said, I'll be a part of the case. And that required me to go away and think, about the cost of it. What would the cost be? And for me, my family and the community would be upset with me.
Hugely.
And would I be okay with that? And would I handle not being liked? And I was like, yes, I can handle not being liked, because there's going to be people that are not okay with that, what's going on, this situation, but it's the right thing to do. And when I was a child in there, I would have loved for someone to do this for me. And I was, I think, excited to confront the hypocrisy and have a legal team to back me.
Great courage. Brian, can you pick up the story and say, so what happened next with the legal aspect?
Probably going a slightly different way. In 2015, one of Pearl's family left and a whole group left. And one went to the media very strongly, got a lot of publicity.
Yeah.
The government, as a consequence, set up an all-of-government response to Gloriavale, and nothing happened. So little sister is left abused right through this period. And if you ever go back and look at those media stories, they talk about exactly what we proved in the court case. Nothing changed. You've got all these government officials doing whatever, I don't know what. And even to this day, the only change has been caused by the litigation we did. So where we started from was I got introduced because a man called John Reddy had been kicked out for reading evil scripture. In other words, scripture that suggested the leaders mightn't quite be as godlike as they wanted to be. So he gets forced out, and I mean literally forced out. He's pushed out. He goes through what they call shepherd and servants meetings, very loud abuse, boom, 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 shoved away from his family. His wife, under influence of the leaders, because she's as much married to the leaders as she is to him, because her marriage vows say she will go to the leaders before him. So they take proceedings in the domestic courts over custody and trying to push him out. And push came to shove, he was round looking for help. He had no money, and he went through the Christchurch legal scene, no luck. Fortuitously, one guy who had picked up to run this sort of stuff, Steve, he came across Dennis Gates, who I'd worked with for years and years. So Steve was, where do I get a lawyer? Dennis said, I got one. Came, saw me, walked in the door and says, you're going to hate me. Why? And he says, well, Gloriavale. So since then, Stephen Patterson and I have been running these cases. The start was to try and help John. So we had a look at the structure and decided it was a trust. So we ran a trust case. They claimed John was out of the trust, so no standing. So his mother, Sharon Reddy, stepped in, and there's a lot of films with Sharon. She's an incredibly courageous lady. She was brought in there when she was 16 and left there through all sorts of disruptions, but the leaders kept a lot of money out of the family. She was married into the Gloriavale system, and her story is a long one of suffering. And that court case then led to the employment cases.
I remember that.
And we opened with the boys. The first boy, and I'm not going to mention his name, we issued proceedings for him. His family got at him. He sadly committed suicide last year. And this is the fate of a lot of Gloriavale. It's horrific what they go through. But his proceeding dropped out, and the other 3 boys who are his friends came and took it over, and we win the boys' case. The boys' case was not appealed, so it's a binding judgment. And while we're doing the boys' actual hearing, that was when the people, we call it the team's case, which was the woman, they watched what was happening, they watched the court, and they actually started to trust that the court system might actually look after them, because they were taught, don't go to court, don't trust evil judges, and they are absolutely taught this. And they started to trust the chief judge of the employment court, and we suddenly had the team's case, of which there were 6, and Pearl is one of the 6. And it went to a full trial, and they all gave their evidence, and the stories are horrific.
Yeah. So in a way, the case from the cases from the young women must have been in a way stronger than the men's case.
Well, it's weaker because the men were working in established industry.
Right.
They were working in
a commercial
moss
setting. Yeah.
factories. They were working in honey factories. They were working in sawmills. They were working in all sorts of clearly jobs. And they started at 6 years old. And they talked of abuse. They talked of beatings for not working hard enough with iron bars, and it's a horrible story. The girls start working with their mothers also from 6 years old. They would, for example, have to serve all the breakfasts and things like that. They would go to school. As soon as school's finished, they'll be back in doing domestic duties around their mums. And the court case said that from 13 years of age, when they got pushed out to be on these teams full-time, they became employees, because it's exactly what Pearl said. This is industrial.
Yeah.
But the claim is, oh no, this is just a wonderful big family, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at the kitchens, you look at the machines, we compared them to one of the commercial kitchens in the high school in Hamilton. We had the lady that ran that school come and give evidence, and you put the pictures together, they're just the same.
Yeah.
And it is a full-time factory. These girls are starting 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and they go till late at night.
Yeah.
Maybe some breaks in the middle, but not really breaks. They were running an absolute production line of commercial food provision for 600 people. Not many kitchens that size in the country.
Yep.
It was a huge enterprise. And a lot of the gear was pretty antiquated, broke down most of the time. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But when you go through the place, it's so commercial.
Yeah. So, Pearl, during this case, and you were giving evidence, did that feel particularly high pressure and stressful for you? It must have, because you were facing criticism from the community. And
it definitely was stressful and traumatic, and then at the same time empowering. And I did find my voice. So, it was both.
Yeah.
But they're sitting in court with the shepherds who have controlled their lives, sitting in the gallery watching. They had, Phil Skelton, the top QC, then KC, cross-examining them. And that's pretty horrific for someone who has been in the outside world for, 2.5 years at that stage?
Yep.
You would have
Can't have been longer than that.
Wouldn't have been longer than that. And you've come from this cloistered world to suddenly full-out assault, and no barrister can prepare a witness for it who's been in life all their time, let alone someone who's come from that cloistered background. So all we could really do is just reassure them, tell your story, and just let it flow. And they were amazing to listen to. They got upset. They had their problems at times, but by God, the answers kept coming back, and it just got worse and worse. So we had very good plaintiffs. Yeah. Very courageous. Yeah. At the end of the day, you just got to take your hat off to them.
Absolutely.
Say, wow.
Yeah. So fast forward. So the case was won. Can you describe the judgment and what this means?
The judgment basically, under the law, the judge has to look at all the circumstances, and she came to the view that this was really a commercial operation, and the people in it were commercially operating. They were employees. They had no choice. They were instructed. They did what they did. The argument that they were volunteers fell to bits very quickly because one of them said, "I didn't choose this. I was born into it."
Yeah,
that's not a volunteer.
Yeah,
and that's the very powerful end to any volunteer argument in my brain. To me, to say they're volunteers is just absolutely ridiculous. Look, if they came in at 18 years of age, fine, they'd choose it. These people have no choice. They're born into it. And I'll tell you, the worst thing I ever saw was little wee girls, and I'm talking little toddlers, and they've got a little scarf on their head. And the question was asked, when do they wear the scarves? And the answer was, as soon as they've got enough hair. But what does a scarf mean in Christian Muslim religions? It's a tribute to Mary. In Gloriavale, it is submission to men. You think about that. Submission to men.
And that's why when I see celebrities wearing scarves and people copying the trend, I'm like, nah, we ain't submitting to men. Do you know what that means?
But that really shook me when I heard that.
So during the case, the principle was no payment for work of a commercial nature that actually should have been paid. Were there parallels drawn between kind of modern slavery and a whole body of kind of international law around that?
You're in an employment forum. You're not allowed to talk about slavery.
Yeah.
We've got a case coming, which is slavery against the government and the leadership, and that will take a few more years to wind its way through. That's the class action.
Yep.
And the application to have it set up as a class action is in about a month's time. So that's the next step in that litigation. And it is taking on the government agencies, the government, the all-of-government response, and the shepherds, the leaders.
Yeah.
I personally have no doubt in my head this is a slave camp. Always has been.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that people often don't make that connection in their own minds between this kind of forced labour and slave camps.
But there's also a terrible underside, because both of the first leaders have both been convicted of sex offending against the girls.
Yeah.
The original conviction was in the early 90s. He got paroled back into the community, ordered by the parole board to live in the community where he offended. The last one, he's just pleaded guilty a few weeks ago.
I saw that, yeah.
He was the top 3 dog right through that period. And little girls serving toast used to draw straws to avoid serving him.
That's shocking.
They were his property.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. How are these cases now affecting people who are left within the community? Are you seeing increasing discomfort from them as they see their leaders being questioned and convicted, and seeing people like you who are able to come out and tell their story? Is that changing the community itself?
Yep, I think they've been propelled forward a lot because of it into situations beyond their control. They've had to comply with the law in some situations, and the boys are contractors now, and so then they have received monetary compensation for their work, but then they are told to donate it back to the community. And then with the girls, the work, they've tried to move it into the hostel so it can't be classed as commercial. So no monetary compensation for the women's work yet. And then it's just like quite a bit of unrest with everything. So there's young people leaving. So that's their workforce disappearing.
Yeah. So can you tell us what happens next? So you mentioned that the case with the teams will go to appeal.
The teams are under appeal. That's later on this month in the Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very important decision for us to hold and keep, because it sets the pace for reform inside this whole organisation. It's also, I think, important that the government agencies, the Labour Inspectorate, who always said they're volunteers, sit up and actually look at the rules they are there to enforce. Yeah, we had one of their witnesses in cross-examination say, slavery, is this about slavery? I do employment. Slavery is employment.
Yeah.
And people forget that, because at the end of the day, when you're a slave, you are fed, you're looked after, and that's your reward.
Yeah.
So that makes it an employment relationship under the law. That's what the judges held, and that's what we hope the Court of Appeal will uphold and keep alive.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there's no laws apart from the criminal law in New Zealand about slavery.
So that introduces the fact that a legislation on modern slavery is enacted in other countries. So New Zealand's close trading partners like Australia have laws on modern slavery, and they had been proposed in New Zealand, but then withdrawn. The process was stopped under the current government.
But the legislation proposed doesn't impact slavery in New Zealand.
Right. So
Gloriavale's problem is that we got the boys' judgment, and then they were hit with two outside bits of litigation. The first was from the dairy company. The dairy company wanted to cancel their contracts because they have international contracts supplying countries with slavery laws.
Yeah.
So they couldn't sell their products so long as they had that problem. The BNZ was the same. Their funding lines depend on countries with anti-slavery laws, so the BNZ was, we're out of here as the bank. It was the outside laws that drove it, not local.
Do you see a prospect for modern slavery legislation coming through with applicability in New Zealand?
No.
Still, it would be useful to have that, presumably internationally.
Very useful to have it. We should have laws around it. We have immigration entrapment, which is slavery.
Yep.
And here we have I call it a sex cult cloaked in religion, practicing slavery. And they've been going 50 years now.
Yeah.
And apart from our litigation, not much happened. The police have got in because the police's problem is they need witnesses. And it's because people have started to see that the courts actually will listen to them. They've started to be able to succeed in prosecutions. They've had prosecutions that's failed in the past. They're now starting to get some bite because people have woken up to the fact that this stuff actually is happening in this country.
Out of all of this, you've described the fact that litigation is leading this and not government action or government policy. Are you starting to be a little bit more optimistic that there will be a stronger framework to stop this continuing?
Absolutely not. We are being fought by the Solicitor General's office, tooth and nail, right through this. The government is our biggest litigation opponent, not Gloriavale leaders.
I think that would be shocking for people to hear.
Well, you go tell politicians that because they all know about it. And when the shepherd got convicted, I went on and I made the comment, it's up to the Prime Minister now. What are you doing, Prime Minister? He was interviewed the next day. I'm very concerned. Well, Prime Minister, you might be very concerned, but you've still done nothing about it. And little girls are going to work in a very abusive situation this morning. And he's a Christian? Sorry.
Yeah.
That ain't Christian to me. That's a gross dereliction of duty. And I just cannot believe the Prime Minister hasn't stepped up to say, what is the all of government response doing? Why aren't we actually getting this cleaned up? Because you know what? They're being told, oh, we're reforming, we're improving. Excuse me?
Yeah.
I've yet to see a recidivist sex offender who genuinely reforms. They have remorse when they're caught.
Yeah.
They don't change. And this group, all they're doing now is playing out time, hoping that the litigation will go away and they can go back to their little happy life as the leaders with very unhappy members.
Yeah.
And that's the reality, isn't it, Pearl?
Yeah.
They will play out the system on a long, long game. That's all that's happening.
Gloriavale's not the first cult, and it's not going to be the last. So the government really needs to, create safety nets for the people coming out with the psychological damage, and then hold the people causing the harm accountable.
So in the court case under employment law, it was said that you were willing volunteers to do work at Gloriavale. How do you feel about that? Were you actually a volunteer? Did you feel like you had a choice?
I would say, can you be born a volunteer?
Right.
I was born into this ideology, system, religion, culture, and there's no choice. I inherited what my parents had already decided for me.
And as you grew up and you started to discover a little bit more about the outside world, how were the pressures on you maintained? What kind of pressure kept you kind of bound to Gloriavale and your family? And
yeah, that's a good question. It all comes back down to the Bible and how they interpret it and misapply it and use it to gaslight and control you. And if you look at the texts, they use a lot of texts from the Old Testament, and it's just full of slavery, it's full of abuse, it's full of wars, it's full of genocide, misogyny, and this is the blueprint for this utopia.
And that kind of control and that kind of behaviour is normally associated with a cult, and people don't often put cult and Gloriavale together. Do you think Gloriavale acted as a cult?
Yeah, we need to call it what it is so that people can just stop thinking it's this quirky little funny community. It causes harm, serious harm, and we need people to take it seriously, and we are citizens of New Zealand just like anyone else, but we don't get the same rights and freedoms. We don't get to choose where to go to school, get to choose if we want a degree and what work we want to do and where we want to live and if we want to get married and have children or not. We don't get all those choices.
Yeah. Who are you going to marry?
Yeah, who are we going to marry? It's all decided for us, and it's our whole worth as a human to follow this blueprint.
Yeah.
And it's all about, just women's life is to have babies, and that's her whole worth. Yeah,
I'm struck by by what you said about the role of women. You're really subservient to men. You have even fewer rights than men have in Gloriavale.
I did watch my mum, and she had 10 children, and I thought she can't even look after us really well. And then I was like, oh, when I was little, I remember thinking, I don't want to have kids, because if I have kids, that's just mean, because then they will either have to go to hell or they will have to live my life, and that's not fair. Or like what's the chance that you get to heaven? Because heaven's like always held over you like this thread that could cut at any time. Like, it's not a given. I just remember thinking when I was little, like, I don't actually want to have kids, but there was no option for me in Gloriavale to choose that.
So you really had no choices. And over time, you described yourself as a bit of a rebel. Did that sort of start to grate on you, the fact that you didn't have those choices?
I think as kids we are just, innocent, playful, and we're good at saying no, and whatever society we're born into and how much of, control there is, we're told not to. And so the older I got, there was more pushback on who I was as a person and what I wanted. I would have been what you'd call a tomboy growing up, like just into everything. My brothers were always biking around, and I remember one time me and my younger brother decided to go bike off the property one day, and we didn't wear helmets because we didn't know, and we just went on the 60k round trip because we thought, oh yeah, we'll just go to Crooked River and bike back. And we were late for the Sunday meeting, so the leader found out, and he came at me and he was like, you're not allowed to bike off the property, you would get kidnapped. You're a single woman and you'd get kidnapped. And I said to him, well, none of us wear rings. The married women don't wear rings, so why would they kidnap me if I'm single? They won't even know. And, he got really angry, and he was just like, don't you talk back to me? And but just more pushback the older you get to like fit the boxes and be a sweet, submissive woman and do what you're told.
Yeah, and the fact that you've come out of this situation and that you're telling your story, does that feel good that you're able to have made that transition?
It's a really big transition. I think what people think are like beliefs are real just like cognitive, but they're a whole body experience, and I've changed so many of my beliefs, and it's how I show up in life and how I live, and it's been a lot of hard work.
More power to you, and congratulations for going through that transition. Most people wouldn't be able to do that. It's real courage.
Thank you.
Brian, I wanted to come back to the issues of KiwiSaver funds, investment funds, and the issues that we've been talking about at Gloriavale. So what do you think the responsibility of a fund manager are? If you're founder and kind of board member of Always-Ethical, how do these kind of situations square with what you're trying to do through investment?
Well, the biggest thing is if you get knowledge that this sort of practice is going on, you have to make a value judgment. Are you going to put money in there? It doesn't matter how much it's making. The question is, what is your moral judgment on that? And the answer to me always has to be, you can't back that sort of exploitation of particularly children. And it's your, as the manager's decision, to say to the investment committee, we don't like that sort of thing, and we don't want to be part of it. And it's hard to find out.
Yeah.
But see, the dairy company found out and they acted straight away because of the international agreements, and that's what we should see out of investment managers.
Yeah. But instead, what we see many investment managers don't really want to look. They'd rather just invest rather blindly and not understand the nature of the companies that they're investing in.
Yeah, they don't look behind to see what is the business. We have to look behind to see how they're making their money, because we expect to see them making or doing something for it, not sitting on interest and that sort of thing. So that's where the not living on interest means we have to look deeper inside, and we've got a group that does that for us. And it costs money, but that's what you do.
Yeah, yeah. It costs money, but as you say, that there's the evidence over decades is that ethical investing does very well for financial returns.
Yep, it does.
And why do you think that is? Do you think that companies that take ethics more seriously or take sustainability more seriously actually often do better financially?
Certainly in the sense of doing or making something where you're providing value to humankind, those companies thrive. And they thrive because they're doing something into a market that wants it and is happy with it, and away it goes. And those companies that aren't doing things for the good of humankind, greed takes people there, but doesn't matter. There are still good companies out there doing well, and you can make good money as an investment manager on it without being driven by greed into something that really isn't as appropriate.
And for most people who are investors and don't know where their money goes, how can they find that out? What's the best way that people can skill themselves up?
We say go look at the mandate. You say go look at your website, because in actual fact, it's no coincidence that all of our companies come through your website without any marker against them. And that's, again, your moral choices. And we actually now look at your website as part of our investment process. So it's take the time.
It's good. We love to see people use Mindful Money's website that way, because it then becomes something that we're contributing.
In that website, we see the views of you and your team come through, and we actually actively look at it and consider it. Becomes a factor. So yes, you've become a factor inside the process. You're not part of the mandate, but you're part of the process we go through as we look at companies. So you have definitely influenced where we're going, and we thought we were pretty good.
Well, thank you for that, Brian. It's great to hear. We've been discussing investing in relation to Gloriavale and other forms of modern slavery. So what's your view on the role of investors and the responsibility of investors?
Yeah, I think investing is for everybody, and there's all different types of investing that suit you and your lifestyle, and you do your due diligence and figure out what works, and in that process find out the ethics of what you're investing in. And
is that something that you've done yourself? Are you kind of along that pathway?
Yeah, so leaving the community and having very unhealthy money beliefs, I took myself off to the library and got a pile of books out, and then I signed up for a investing course with Simran Kerr.
Oh, yeah.
She runs Friends That Invest. She's got a profile on Instagram, and she's got a podcast, and I've been on my own journey.
Simran's great. Yeah, well, terrific. That's great to hear.
And you're now doing a business degree.
And now I've started my business degree.
Very good. It's great. Brian, I wanted to just come back to the issue to connect back to your Always-Ethical fund management work. So obviously your fund has strict ethical policies, and I think it's great the way you have really strong adherence to mandates around ethical policies.
Yeah.
Presumably, I know that Always-Ethical doesn't invest in companies that commit human rights violations. Do you think that's the case across other investment funds? Why do you think there isn't a stronger ethos around this? Because the figures I talked about, almost $4 billion New Zealand dollars. And
well, Barry, you and I both know we've been able to show that running ethics can compete with the best. And we have been up against all the big funds, and we are credibly with them. We've been in the top 5 right through until the start of this year. We got caught horribly by Mr. Trump and his tariffs, and we were fully in the market. We took a hit. We've rebuilt that back since then, but that hit our 31st March figures because that occurred right in the start of March. That's a statistical blip. But it doesn't change the fact ethical investing is as good as other investments, whether they follow or don't follow. But my concern is a lot of them are just led by the dollar.
Yep. Thank you so much for your courage, Pearl, and coming on this podcast and for the stand that you've taken. That's terrific. And to you, Brian, amazing commitment.
If a call to action for people out there that care about Gloriavale and the community and the women and the children, keep emailing your politicians, asking them what they're doing about it, and make it their problem. Yeah. As long as it's not their problem, they're not going to do anything about it. And
there's ways that people can take action, and it's often good for people to go and see their local MP about issues like that. MPs don't get people coming to ask them about these kind of things. If we're going to build cross-party support for action on Gloriavale and as you say, other cults, then the politicians have to hear from us.
Yeah, like what's happening across the world in Gaza at the moment, and there's a lot of momentum building about that, and it's a yes and situation. That is wrong, and yes, and we have it in New Zealand, and what are we doing about it right now in our own country? Yeah.
Just one of the reasons why situating this as kind of modern slavery and a violation of human rights is important, because those human rights also apply to situations like Gaza or so many others, trafficking of women internationally or whatever. And that actually helps people realise that your basic rights have been abused for years when you were younger, and it's fantastic that you've been able to come out and obviously build a good life.
Thank you. Ka kite.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barry.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, and for all your fantastic commitment to this work. Thank you both very much.